All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this seminar or webinar, should I say, on the status of the construction industry. I'm very pleased to have, yes, I'm pleased to have worked with the Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association and the Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago and the Construction Management Institute of Trinidad and Tobago in putting this together. So I want to thank from the upfront, I want to thank each of these reputable organizations for putting this together, this united seminar to talk about the industry which affects us all, which influences our lives, which influences the life of persons living in our country. The construction industry is, in my opinion, the most important industry for the development of Trinidad and Tobago, and so we are very concerned that in the direction which it maybe appear to be going. So we want to talk about a lot of issues this afternoon. We have very limited time to do so, so we'll try to get through as much as we can. If you're online, please adhere to our 3 regulations with respect to posting questions and libelous content. All right, I've posted those 3 regulations twice in the YouTube chat. And again, welcome to the online viewers. You may feel free to post your questions at any point during the webinar. So the first thing I need to do is introduce our exceptionally talented and qualified and experienced participants this afternoon. And we will go in order of gender this evening. So we're going to start with Ms. Listra Charles Ragu from Comet, the president of Comet. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. As Dr. Don clearly said, I represent Comet in this forum. My name is Listra Ragu, and I just hope I could be able to put some insight into the issues facing us in the industry.
Thank you very much, Listra. Moving in order, let's have Mr. Adish Surajnath from representing APET introduce himself.
Hi, are you hearing me, Don?
I am.
Very well. Very
well.
Hi, good afternoon. Representing APET, my name is Adish Surajnath. I work with Trinto Plan Consultants. I have about 25 years experience, and I am here to hopefully contribute something as well as learn from the others who share the vast knowledge that we have here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Adish. And Mr. Glenn Mahavir, who has been recently featured in the media circles. Mr. Mahavir, please introduce yourself again.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. Dr. Samuel, we like that, the association would like to thank you for facilitating this this webinar to discuss the issues in the construction sector, as well as develop ideas, strategies to improve the industry. This is my second term as president of the Contractors Association. I've been involved with the association in excess of 10 years. I've been in the industry, generally in contracting, general contracting. So look forward to making some contributions this afternoon and learning. Thanks.
All right, thank you all. So again, we are well represented in the construction industry this afternoon. We have our contractors, we have our engineers, we have our consultants. All right. So the first thing I want to ask each of the panelists to do is to contribute by way of answering this one question. What, in your opinion, is the most significant issue affecting the construction industry? And this time we'll go in reverse order. So we'll ask Glenn to take that question first. And in order to be fair to the other panelists, Glenn, I'll just take about 5 minutes. I know you can answer that question in probably a half an hour, but just 5 minutes and then we move on, right? So go ahead, Glenn.
So I think it's excellent, question in terms of starting the seminar or the webinar on. Given that we are in a pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, which has been ongoing for 12 plus months, the industry has been severely affected by series of events arising from this whole pandemic. And to name a few, which has negatively impacted the industry and further created challenges. One of the main challenges is the supply chain issue with respect to securing materials, as well as escalating on or unpredictable prices of materials. And that has a rippling effect in terms of where contractors would have had or have existing contracts ongoing for the last few months or prior to the pandemic. Those contractors would have, severe, been affected severely with price increases, shortages of material. So one is, again, the supply chain input into the industry. Again, because of the pandemic, there was a lot of expenditure related to health issues from government spending. And as such, payment to contractors is still a challenge in terms of timely payment to contractors, which again, all would understand the importance of cash flow in construction. There's a time delay in terms of purchasing materials versus installing the materials and getting paid for the works done. So cash flow is really one of the most important factors in terms of surviving in construction. So I would say those are the two pressing matters. And as we go through the seminar, I'm sure you would have other topics that would arise that would be discussed.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Glenn. This is very important, the cash flow issue, and it's something we'll talk about more detail in our next session. Harish, what would you say from the engineers and the consultancy side would be your most significant issue affecting the construction industry?
Well, again, what I would share Mr. Mahavir Singh's view on financing. One of the largest client in the construction industry is the government, and you have the government awarding construction contracts, and yet contractors as well as consultants are not getting paid on time, and this is affecting their respective companies' operations. Because again, if you don't have the payments coming in, you have to pay salaries, have utility bills, you have suppliers to pay. And similar things like that. Some things that are of extreme concern, though, is that in certain FIDIC type contracts, the employer there's a clause where the employer has to provide proof of source of funds. And what you have now is that in these state enterprises who represent basically the government, they're removing that clause from the contracts. So they're under no obligation to prove that they have the funds for the contracts they're awarding. Yes. Another thing that is also of concern again is that the contractors and consultants would have some sort of recourse with finance charges where they get paid late. Again, on these state enterprise contracts that are FIDIC governed, you have the state enterprises removing those clauses, which would allow at least some level of recourse for if the consultants and the contractors get paid late. So again, basically, what it ends up being is that the consultant or the contractor is basically financing the project. That basically is a serious concern, because again, you have salaries to pay, you have bills to pay, you have suppliers to pay, and again, you have to run your organization, and not having the cash flow hinders that, especially as Mr. Mahavir Singh pointed out with the COVID-19 challenges with the supply chain being affected. Again, suppliers want the money up front, whereas you'd have some level of credit. Now these because of the financial situation in the world itself, the credit that's being extended to you is being reduced, sometimes eliminated, depending upon who your supplier is. So again, I would just have in my view right now, the most significant issue affecting is financing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we have some common threads here. Even from the engineer side, they even admitting that financing, you must have the cash flow info in order for the project to work.
Yeah, right? But again, sorry, just one thing I forgot to mention. One thing I forgot to mention is that your biggest client, they have removed these things. Yet, if you deliver late, you're being charged delay damages.
Correct. The
which is
liquidated.
it's a very one-sided relationship there.
Yeah, and that is one of the other topics we are to talk about in the other sessions coming up. So we'll just take up in on it now. Let me hear from Listra.
Well, whilst I agree with Mr. Mahavir Singh and Mr. Suraj Nant, but COVID-19 has only added to the problems that we had previous, which the OFF report showed clearly. And within the construction management MSc degree, research was done by individuals and students for both the contractor end and the employer end when it came to issues that were affecting the industry. And what we have is on the employer side, and this research was done by Mr. Anton Balfour in 2015.
Yeah.
And it was the major problems of the Trinidad and Tobago construction sector, the state organization's opinion. And in the state organization's opinion, the top 5 ranking was over ambiguous objectives, contractors' financial problems, construction in high-risk areas, constructability and delayed approvals, and that is going from 1 to 5. But on the contractor's end, we would have found that unfair payment practices and delayed payments were at the top of the list. And going back to what Mr. Mahavir Singh said, and Suraj Nant, payment and cash flow is of great importance to any organization, whether it is consultants, whether it is contractor, whether it is engineers. As long as you are in the industry, cash flow, it has a major role to play. Without cash flow, there is a ripple down effect down the supply chain. The second problem contractors were having were design scope and material changes. The third, construction in high-risk areas. Fourth, lack of feasibility studies and brief. And 5, corruption and unethical practices. So you can see the difference in the first 5 as to what the employer finds to be important and what the contractor and consultants find to be important. And unless we can find ourselves on the same page, improvements will not happen.
Yes, I want to echo that that statement, and I think everybody would agree with me that we need to venture from what they call aggressive contracting or aggressive relationships with contractors and consultants and more into collaborative contracting. Of course, we'll get into that discussion a bit. So thank you very much for that initial contribution from the panelists. So I want to go into this first session on procurement. Right, this is a big ticket word that has been affecting this industry for quite some time. A couple of months ago, I had an interview with the procurement regulator, which some of you would have attended. And there are a lot of different things that have to be done in order to facilitate proper, transparent procurement in Trinidad and Tobago. So, my question to the panelists would be this. And Listra mentioned the OFF report. From that time that the OFF report was produced to today, have we seen a reduction, in your opinion, of bid rigging or collusion or corruption in tendering? Has procurement really become more transparent? So any of the panelists could take it, or all of the panelists could take that question. What would you say? Who wants to go first on that? Arish is smiling.
I mean, I haven't seen much change in terms of improvement. I am still seeing you have multiple, like a parent company has a number of subsidiary companies, and they all tender for the same job. So in terms of the probability of that one of the companies winning, it increases. right? And you're not seen in terms of even if they are in the rules and in the tender rules. I mean, the way these companies are set up, I mean, they have their own individual board of directors and all that. So, but when you look at the financial statements of the parent company, you're basically seeing who the subsidiary companies are, but you're not seeing the employer looking in that level of detail in the tender submissions or requesting that level of information to be able to see exactly whether or not you have multiple subsidiary companies tendering for the same project.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I know that I have seen that as well. It could be construed as collusion, but without the appropriate evidence, you wouldn't be able to really pinpoint it. But we kind of know what is going on, where multiple, especially in the open bidding process, as you say, where multiple people representing the same company could bid. In terms of the corruption in construction and what is perceived, and anybody could take this question, answer it from two perspectives. One is how we as professionals view corruption, and the second question, how do you think the public perception of corruption in the construction industry has changed?
I would let me make my contribution on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? Okay, so again, from the contracting sector, and also in terms of submitting tenders and responding to tenders through state agencies, basically all the agencies. What we have observed there is a significant improvement in terms of some state agencies with respect to using technology. So a lot of state agencies have gone on an e-platform system or database, and even some of them has gone as further as submitting your tender online. So example, WASA, UDICOT, fully online, NITCO, to some extent. So in terms of adopting e-system or e-platform, that has advanced in the last couple of years. With respect to bidding and public openings, in fact, the public openings is a standard practice now, where as years ago it used to be selective, now is a standard accepted practice that public openings will take place. Again, the pandemic has created a challenge with people assembling in rooms, but I have seen state agencies do public openings on using Zoom, and it's very efficient. In fact, you don't need to drive somebody down to the office. So time is back on submitting the tender, they would send the link within a couple of hours, and somebody in the office can attend the public opening. So I would say there's improvement again, as the public procurement legislation is on table, and a lot of agencies is moving towards gearing up their systems to that requirement. I would summarize and conclude that there has been significant improvement in terms of procurement. Again, there's always room for the ones who set out to do something wrong, acting in the background, but I would say that is a very, very minor and maybe negligible.
Yeah, fair enough. And let me get Listra to chime in here a little bit. What do you think is the perception of the public on the construction industry? Because I'll tell you something. I remember when I had hosted this disaster resilient seminar back in 2018. I was interviewed on TV for 5 minutes. And after the interview, I was watching the Facebook page. And this one guy wrote, yeah, well, the only reason he wants the public to use engineers is because he wants more money. And so that is a perception that we need to create, to stymie altogether. What Listra would you say is the view of the public on the construction industry at this time?
I don't think we're in a good light really, because there are lots of, and we go back to the procurement legislation. In my view, it's still early to see any impact with regard to the institution, the legislation, because it's not fully operational just yet. But yet still we are seeing our major organizations, and I'm speaking about the special purpose companies, the major ones, trying to find themselves ways in which they they don't come under the microscope of the procurement legislation, which to me I find, and the general public wouldn't really understand this, and therefore their purview of what happens behind closed doors when it comes to the tendering process and when it comes to selection is they are not privy to these information, and therefore they will only go and have a perception of what they can actually see, and they will see, okay, the government is spending an allocation of billions of dollars on projects, and in some cases the buildings are not being used, it's being left to deteriorate and then coming to have maintenance done on the building, and that's what they see. And they will only see this as a form of a wastage of taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, without knowing, without understanding the process that it takes and the confidentiality that's required. And also, one of the things I've known about, which I found about us, well, actually us as engineers, but in the construction industry, we probably need to do more to sensitize the public to some of the processes, not all of it, but some of it which is relevant to what they're interested in. As to, in other words, some of the public sometimes do not know why a project is being done. Okay. And the first thing that runs into the mind, well, it's corruption, these guys are going to take some money, that kind of thing. So I think that's one of the outtakes of this of our webinar is that we need to do something better to engage with the public and to correct that perception of corruption. Now, what doesn't help, as both Glenn was saying, sorry, what doesn't help is that there are still these pockets of tendering and collusion and corruption that happen from time to time, allegations. And so unless the allegations are proven, either in the court of law, I should say, then it will continue to be just that allegation, but allegations tend to run a little while in Trinidad. So I agree with you, with all of you on that front. Before we go on to the next session, let me ask a couple of...
There was another research done, if I were to interrupt you, there was another research done by Mr. Rishi Kuno in 2017 that showed 92% of contractors, construction firms, not contractors, but construction firms undertake corrupt and unethical, they conduct.
Where's that? Is that in Trinidad?
Yeah, I mean, we researchers showed it.
I need to clarify.
Okay. It doesn't mean, I'm not putting it out there as all, but research has shown it. So it's the job of the Construction Management Institute to bring it into the light, which is why it's mentioned, you know.
All right.
So everyone, in my view, has to assess themselves, both government and contractor, consultants, everybody in the industry needs to assess themselves so that we can move forward in a better light and be viewed as an industry that is a professional one.
Agreed. And so I know Glenn probably want to respond on that, but
no, well, again, the solution, I think all the associations within the construction sector, inclusive of the JCC, all signed on to the procurement legislation and implementing the procurement legislation to resolve all these issues. And there's serious consequences if you or if you do otherwise. So I know there have been a lot of lobbying and a lot of noise making to bring this legislation into action. I think it's late in Parliament currently, soon to be debated and enacted. So hopefully we within the next quarter, early 2022, we should see these challenges in procurement actually resolving and we move forward as an industry. So we could focus on constructing.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, the Strauss research points us in the direction where we don't want to go, right? And I think what we need to understand, and without me getting into the political scene, is that corruption could only happen if there's a, what I was you looking for, opportunity for it to happen, okay, right? If there's an opportunity created by someone, then corruption will happen. So while the legislation was going to come into play, there needs to be the reporting. And so there's the whistleblowing part of the legislation, which the regulator had spoken about some time ago when I was interviewing. And so unless there's whistleblowing, but it can't just be whistleblowing alone, it has to be whistleblowing along with evidence. So I can't go and say that I found Glenn Mahabir saying in corruption, and I report that to the Office of the Procurement Regulator without the evidence. So it's a very ticklish situation, and therefore we have to get to the root cause of these situations and weed it out, as they say. All right. So thank you.
I want to make one more contribution.
Yeah,
Again,
go ahead.
procurement. Well, we're focusing on the discussion is around again tendering and being awarded through a tender action, right? Also, there's challenges with respect to again contractors. A project may be out for tender. The contractor bids or underbids. Is successful and was awarded the project, and because of his low price or his difficult pricing that he has, he would try to cut corners or deliver substandard work, which somebody on the supervisory end or the FIDIC engineer would accept or let it pass. So all that's in the circle of procurement, and I think. And I think given the volume of work currently in the market, and if you would watch the trend, there's a lot of low bidding, a lot of I wouldn't want to say underpricing, but if you want to put it, summarize that underpricing, and those contractors are awarded the project, and hope that somebody wouldn't make the engineer may have been diligent enough and allow something to slide, which is really to the detriment of value for money in terms of the public, because you may construct a road or you may construct something that may not fulfill the life cycle requirement, and who end up paying for this, the public. So one way to talk procurement is not only the bidding and the tendering effort and the transparency in awarding, is really also in executing and delivering what the project requirement had, which is specification, quality, and what was outlined in the scope of works.
Exactly, and I know we can stay on this. I know we can stay on this topic whole evening, but I want to get to the next session. But I know Arish has been quiet for a while, so
just further to what Glenn was saying, I think a big failure there would be the tender evaluation committee, because you have your own engineer's opinion of probable cost. And if you see this contractor comes in under price, and you'd see specifically where he's coming under price, and you should be able to point out whether or not if it's an unrealistic price, and then during the construction you're going to get issues. And what I have seen being put in statements being put in the employer's document, in the tender documents, is that the employer is not bound to accept the lowest bid. Right? In certain state enterprises, they're pushing now towards having a kind of technical and a financial component to the bids, where both are evaluated and given a certain weighting. But I think where you have these underpriced bids are being awarded, to me, is a failure of the tender evaluation committee, not doing a proper job.
Don, I just want to comment on one point that Arish.
Yeah, because I want to move on to the next technical session.
Right, is engineer's estimate, right? How realistic or how valid is the engineer's estimate relative to construction and constructability, and not just taking the 5 past projects you work on, take some rates and put it on and up with a figure, because sometime, in fact, I recently came across a project with a very low engineer's estimate again, and somehow everybody, when they bid, it was a wrong engineer's estimate. But again, is if you could deliver the project, so maybe I think some effort is required in the engineer's estimate if the engineer's estimate has a strategy behind the figures.
Right. So I'm gonna jump in now on this one, right? Because this is my PhD right down the line, right? So everything everybody's saying here is obviously quite true. It's quite acceptable.
I agree with what Mr. Mahabir just said.
Yeah.
And what Mr. Adish said as well. The experience when it comes to awarding and tendering and reviewing documents. The engineers estimate, a lot of times we will see that, again, as Mr. Mahavir Singh said, they will take projects from 10 years ago and come to you with an engineer's estimate that is 10 years old. And what about, does anybody ask the question, what about fluctuation in prices within that last 10 years or to current? How does that work? It will never work because you have to be current. You cannot take 10 years ago and bring it today in 2021 to say, well, okay, when we designed it in 2010, it was 10 million. So we wanted to be constructed in 2021 at the same price. That's can't possible. That is not possible.
I think one thing I want to add here, I think I kind of going over in some other topics that Dr. Samuel wanted to cover is that you have even let's suppose, and I mean I'm speaking firsthand from a particular situation. We had some we had some experience with is that we had a quantity surveyor on our team, and the employer wanted us to remove the quantity surveyor. I mean, the quantity surveyor will be the one who's giving us whose expertise is actually collecting the information on rates and building up the prices, right? I mean, I would like to say an engineer could do that, but really, I mean, the expert in that is really the quantity surveyor, and the employer wanted to the employer wanted to remove them from our project team. So I mean,
let me jump in now. So so we go to the next session. So yeah, totally agree. You know, some of the problems with procurement actually do have to do with the legislation policies. You know, it has to do with two words: behavior and ethics, or unethical behavior. And in the case of what Adish was talking about, where we are removing certain clauses to give clients advantages, or using engineers, as this was saying, using engineers estimate from 10 years ago. Some of these things point to new ethics. So what we need to do is we need to establish fair play rules for the industry in alignment with your procurement legislation. We need to look at the issue of nepotism, because Trinidad is a small country and invariably everybody knows everybody else. We need to look at equality, right? Is it a matter of one contractor getting all the contracts? Is that part of fair play? We need to look at the gender issues in procurement, and of course, the major one be the political influences. And we know that, and when I talk about political influences, we're not necessarily talking about the political parties. We're talking about within client organizations. Clients will tell you what to do. I'm not knocking clients, but sometimes they tell you what to do, and you have to advise them. One of the things that came out of the research I was talking about, which is right down in my PhD, is that tenders, I have found that sometimes you do an evaluation, you give this contractor 95 out of 100. And then the performance of the contractor is, let's say, 75 out of 100. Now, is that necessarily an indictment of the contractor? Not necessarily. It could be that, as both Adish and Glenn was saying, is that the tender evaluation team did not consider everything in its wholeness or its entirety. So those are the issues around the procurement. But I want to move to the next session because we're kind of running late because we have some technical sessions to go through. So if we have some time, we'll come back to this. So the next one we want to talk about is the one that all three of you mentioned earlier, which is about project financing. Project financing in the industry. Let's talk about the supply chain. What is the issue with the supply chain at this point in time that is resulting in these fluctuations of rates? Anyone?
Okay, I would take on that done. Okay, again, arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been ongoing 12, 15 months now. Again, Trinidad and Tobago, in the construction sector in Trinidad and Tobago, basically everything is imported except aggregate, cement. So we rely a lot on imports. And you would have the industry or the world would have suffered some consequences of the COVID-19, where you have mills, steel mills shutting down. You would have factories shutting down due to the COVID situation. And as such, their production would have been reduced. Coming out or restarting, a lot of the economies are restarting, and they're using construction as stimulus arrangement. and demand has picked up, as well as shipping. So one is the factories or the manufacturing facilities worldwide catching up with the demand, as well as shipping. Freight companies have increased freight, as well as a shortage on shipping containers. So in terms of planning that is required for construction, it requires much more effort in terms of understanding what your long lead items are and procuring it early, so it would arrive within a reasonable time for implementation. Yeah.
Mr. Adish, any views on that?
I think Glenn captured basically everything there. I mean, one thing is the shortage of shipping containers is affecting delivery of materials, because I mean, you have these shipping containers going to the port of arrival, but yet there's no goods to go back to the source where the containers come from. So these containers just basically lying down in a particular location. And I mean, just a simple thing like a shortage of shipping containers affects delivery of materials.
That's an interesting point, and I myself did not realize this, so that's a learning lesson for me. Let's hear.
With the advent of COVID-19, like everyone says, the increase in cost and is so unpredictable that you cannot gauge if today you pay a price for one item and tomorrow for the same item you're paying triple and double and triple and maybe even more when it comes to procuring materials and other equipments and that kind of stuff. So to deal with this issue, I want to believe that the largest employer, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, really can't expect the industry, the consultants, the contractors, the companies of this industry to really handle these unforeseen price increases. And therefore, I think there is now the need for fluctuation clauses to be placed so that within contracts.
So the question would be then, we have fluctuation clauses in the FIDIC contracts. The question now for you listeners is, are the employers going to accept them? There's not advantages to their position though.
Well, in one way, they're the largest employer.
Right.
Know. And other countries, we see it in other countries, they tend to, in order to get the economies back on track, they are really assisting the industry to deal with these fluctuation prices. The fluctuation of these prices are not the fault of anyone in the industry. And
Agreed.
Government should be lenient enough, at least for now, until things get back to normal. So Glenn,
you could respond to that?
deal with this issue so that we can move forward and we can have the economy going again, because the construction industry is the barometer of every country. The economic barometer of every country, and to get this industry moving again at a pace where the country can improve financially, economically, they need to look at it in this light.
I would agree with
that. Totally agree with you. So and so I want Glenn to respond if there's any headway with the government without.
Okay, so very early in 2021, back in January, we as the association made representation to the Minister of Works, as well as UDCOT, NITCO, NIPTEC, the state agencies with the larger mandate in construction, with respect to reconsidering the inclusion of the fluctuation clause. A lot of these state agencies have deleted the fluctuation clause under the contract, so therefore contractors, most contractors currently, or most state enterprise contracts, will not entertain fluctuation in material prices or that have arose. And to give some examples, again, done for your membership, like Reba would have increased from $4.50 a kilogram to $8 plus a kilogram. You would have lumber, sheet of ply moving from maybe $150 to as much as $400. You would have, well, all steel, which is roof sheeting, purlins, decking, structural steel. So, contractors who would have bid competitively and may not have anticipated or may not have projected some level of contingencies, just won't have the funds to continue the project. So you could have two consequences. Okay, a contractor injecting his additional funds to finish a project again
which will lower his profit.
To save him wider, he just walk away from the project. And we have had some feedback, from contractors in the industry that they're reaching to that point in terms of they need to make a decision if they should continue or if they should just call it a day and inform the client that I didn't anticipate this level of expenditure with respect to inputs and material. Again, when a contractor busy would allow for maybe 10%, 0 to 10.
Of course.
Some on the items, and you would be trending it prior to December or November 2020. Steel prices, rebar prices was generally consistent for the last 5, 6, 8 years. And all of a sudden, again, arising out of the pandemic, you would have a sharp increase. And nobody would have anticipated. And as Mr. Abu indicated, a lot of suppliers, again, because of the pandemic situation, would currently deal with upfront payment or full payment or at least a significant partial payment. And contractors will need to put out a cash flow to make the purchase, receive the material on site, install it during the typical month, wait for it to be certified, and then wait how much, 30 days, 45 days, 56 days, some places, some plans into
77
days. So you're talking 3 months after installing it. So again, if contractors and there's a lot of contractors in the market, if contractors, when they receive their bid document, really don't study it and understand all the ramifications, all the clauses, they could find themselves in some serious problems during implementation.
But I wanted to say that the other dimension is this issue of bid validity, because when invitations to bid or tender are sent out, some clients would indicate, let's say, 30 days, or I haven't seen that client done it for a while, 90 days, 180 days bid validity. For a contractor to hold their price for 180 days, it means, as you say, you have to factor in the issue of risk and price fluctuation upfront. But because of that long period of time, during that time now, material prices could vary, and fluctuate. So that's one issue. What about anybody's response here? And anyone could take it up before I get to some questions in the public chat there. Labor fluctuations, as in labor rate fluctuations. What you want to start with, Adish? Adish, you have any take on that? Labor rate fluctuation?
Well, I haven't seen much in terms of the labor rate fluctuations. Everything basically kind of guides off what the minimum wage rate is, and then everybody comes off of that in terms of setting your labor rates. But right. In terms of what I've seen in tenders recently, a lot of the labor rates, I mean, Glenn might be a better person to comment as he would see that firsthand. But what I've seen in tenders is that the labor rates kind of consistent in the last few years.
Yeah, I would confirm with that with Adish in terms of the labor rate is consistent. Again, you have some level of reduction in activity, construction activity, and again, because there's limited or less work on the market, you have subcontractors as well as direct labor. You have a small percentage of reduction in I would say, hourly rates, which is a reflection of the industry. Labor is predictable. You could to some extent you could predict your cost for labor, and that could go as much as 12 or even 18 or 24 months. Relatively variable in industries and materials.
Listra?
A major factor in the labor issue might be the number of migrants that we have currently. Willing to work for minimum and sometimes less than minimum wage. So you will find that labor will stick to on around the same without having any great movement.
Good.
At this time.
And of course, then you had to factor in the unions intervention and of course labor rights, and then you had to factor in, of course, the impact of COVID. I mean, we're still suffering from the impact of COVID, of course, right? So those are things we have to factor in, right? So okay, let me move on. Before I get into the next technical session, so we're running a little bit behind time, but let me just talk about a couple of issues. Allocation versus actual funding. So, every year we have a budget, right? And there's a PSIP document that comes out with it, and of course, allocation. What is your take on allocation versus funding? Should we be requesting clients to say, here's what, we actually have the funding before we proceed to tender? Is that an issue?
Well, I mean, it kind of comes back to what I talked about earlier. But I think you really need to make sure you have the funds before you invite contracts, because then again, if you don't have the funding, it affects your payments, your contractors, your consultants, and the delivery of the goods and the services. And then that in turn, the contractors, the consultant may end up having to basically finance the project. Right, and that affects the cash flow of the organization if it wasn't planned, if that wasn't the original plan. And it comes back to what I mentioned earlier, where you have some state enterprise and removing the clauses about proof of funds, removing the clauses about finance charges if into the delayed payments, and that has significant effect on the project and the company's operations.
See, one of the things that happening is that sometimes we as clients, we believe that putting all the risk on the contractor, the consultant, we will escape it as clients, but it's our project. So putting the risk on the contractor and the consultant in totality is basically routing the risk back to you. And therefore there needs to be a maturity of thought in the industry over how we conceptualize construction projects and contracts. I'm gonna take one question from the chat. So this is from Al Rashid. Has there been any impetus at any level during the pandemic for T&T to be able to at least fight against the price hikes? Any new trade agreements with our partners or incentive to local manufacturers? Who wants to take that?
I don't think I've heard of any agreements or MOUs with between our government or any other agency or government to deal with the price hikes. So really, we are dealing with this issue on our own.
Yeah, I wonder if he's referring to, I remember cement, this incident with the cement, there was this one hardware that had increased the price of cement. Somebody just correct me if it's not, I think it was $80 or $90 a bag. And of course, that resulted in a social media intensities. So what do we do? Can we control against those kind of situations?
What about the protectionism of the government with the respect? You touched on cement there, where you had you have the government through TCL being the major cement supplier, and then you had another cement, and you had an importer of cement on the market, and then you have this change in legislation with quotas being imposed now in terms of the tonnage that could be imported in any one period in a specific period. I mean that I mean is protectionism on the government's part, but I mean, is that really required, right? Especially in this time.
Yeah, you see, competition is good for the consumer. Go ahead, Douglas.
Okay, so watching the CARICOM region, in fact, I think Guyana did some adjustments. Okay, so what they did, you have the okay, so you're importing a product, and the duties are charged on the CIF cost, which is the cost of the goods, and the freight, insurance and freight. What they did, they Okay, a shipping container is currently how much? 10,000, 12,000 US dollars to move to rent a 40-foot container. What they did, they factor back in their duty calculation, send it back to 2,500. So therefore you pay on a pre-COVID, you pay duties on pre-COVID prices as opposed to the increase in escalation in shipping costs. So they bring some relief. So that was a good strategy in terms of stimulating the economy. We haven't done that here, but hopefully something would be done soon in possibly when we hear the budget on the 4th of October that that would help stimulate the construction industry again, as Mr. Agro indicated. The health of our construction industry indicates how healthy the economy is the largest employer. So let's look forward to if the 4th of October brings any relief.
Yeah, and I was going to say that.
One of the things that could probably solve the problem I apologize, Don.
No, go.
One of the things that will probably ease the prices where one hardware will have a price and the other one will be double is that of monopoly. The anti-monopoly legislation is one way of dealing with that issue. But going back to the problem or the issue where of payments and whether or not our government agencies and special purpose companies should have monies in their bank account before they award a contract. And I think that is of utmost importance because it shows that the government is on the right track, and that this way of prompt payment legislation is another way is via prompt payment legislation to ensure that these organizations, before they award contracts, the government of Trinidad and Tobago would have allocated this money and given this money to the agency that will be in charge of these projects to deal with them, so that at least at the end of the day, tenderers and contractors, consultants, we will all know, okay, we are awarded this contract and that the agency responsible for this project has the money to go through and to complete the project. Now, this not only assures that everyone is rest assured that monies are there to pay everyone. It will also assist in the wastage of funds in cash flow for everyone. And they will have a lot more faith in the government of Trinidad and Tobago in carrying out projects of large,
Yes, I think I agree with you there. I think it points to, sometimes people interpret cash flow to mean that you should have all the money upfront for the project, and not necessarily so. What you need to do is have the cash flow in a way that the releases come at the same time as the milestone payment. So when a contractor submits for payment, they must have the release there so that the contractor could be paid on time, because they must maintain your cash flow on your project. So that's one of the key issues. Now, something that someone touched on, and this is about stimulating the construction industry, which in turn should stimulate the economy. And then I'll move on to the next session, which is there seems to be dwindling construction opportunities now. The reasons given, of course, being that the economy is not so hot. And the question is, do you agree with that statement? Is it that we haven't dwindling construction opportunities because of the economy, or is it that the pie is getting smaller? Well, what would be your take on that? Because as Glenn alluded to earlier, there could be some contractors that fold, not because they're not getting opportunities. What is your take on that? Any panelists could answer this?
From the last few pre-tender meetings I attended, as I think the pie has gotten smaller, because for certain projects you wouldn't expect to see certain contractors present, but basically for the smallest of projects, I've seen large contractors attending these pre-tender meetings, yes, indicating that I mean, they're trying to go after everything or whatever is available. So you having less projects, anybody same contractor base going for them. So there has been some reduction. I mean, we're on some projects here now where they're pushing us to try and get the designs done so that they can send out, they can invite tenders for a number of projects. So things may be picking back up, but I mean, again, it comes back to this whole thing with the COVID and us getting stuff getting this under control, because you have again probably again it kind of goes over something that you're going to talk about just now in terms of health and safety, that you have clients now, employers requesting that everybody on their side be vaccinated, right? I mean, and again, well, we know that they have some people with concerns about that, and then laborers or skilled tradesmen, if they're not vaccinated, what's the situation there?
Yeah, and definitely that's actually our next session, which is the we're going to talk about human resources. But before I go to that next session, Glenn, you want to have a session? Any
Okay,
thoughts?
so my comments is that okay, so the country would have earned, well, revenues would have fallen due to the energy sector. Again, the energy sector is one of the large revenue earners, which is oil and gas. And those revenue streams would have reduced significantly. And then we went to a COVID situation, which required a lot more spending on health-related social services. So a lot of funds, if you follow the day-to-day press issues, would have gone into social services, grants, relief grants, COVID-related issues. So I guess the funds that would have been left over which is really to support construction, and construction spending is really discretionary. So if you take at your own personal level, again, you have some basic things to meet on a monthly basis, and then your surplus is for any upgrades, expansion, or capital expenditure. So I guess the country's economy is on more or less the same basis. So definitely those factors would have again reduced the amount of opportunities in terms of projects on the market for tendering. And you could follow it on the newspapers. Once a week you would see invitation to tender being published. So definitely there needs some sort of level of injection to stimulate the construction sector and create employment. We need to get people back to work.
Yeah, agreed, Lustra.
It goes down again to cash flow, as Mr. Mahavir Singh said, and Surajnath. It's all with respect to finances in terms of the income coming into the country and what government sees as what is more important. And in this current time, we are seeing that they're treating COVID-19 and the effects of COVID-19 as priority, However, whatever little that is coming out into the industry for us to bid on, like Mr. Ade said, contractors and consultants who you don't see rarely are turning up. And we will also have the issue of inexperienced people who now coming into the industry bidding for projects that are really not in their categories. So therein lies another problem. People bidding for projects that are not within their scope of professionalism.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with that. This is one of the issues that we have with the whole cash flow problem, and it seems to be a recurrent theme that will continue to affect us from time to time. Let me get on to the next issue, which is of the human resources in the construction sector. All right, the human resources. Now, one of the issues that I'm observing more of is this issue of expert advice versus armchair experts. All right, so we have persons in the industry who appear to be experts, they're not, and they're giving expert advice to the general public. What can we do about this as contractors, professional engineers, professional consultants? Arish, you want to start us off?
Well, again, it comes back to the qualifications of the individuals giving the advice. Are they properly qualified? Has any background checks been done on these people calling themselves experts? I mean, I have never used the term expert to describe myself, right? I mean, I just say I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? That's how
Although
I
we do
describe
think
it.
that you are a geotechnical expert, but good.
Right, but I think we need to make sure that in terms of we verify the qualifications of the personnel, because I mean, again, I think I had a concern about this, that I was on certain projects. You have these people calling themselves engineers, but when you actually check on their qualification, they aren't a qualified engineer, at least by the definition of what engineer is. I mean, I think one of these APET meetings, I probably raised that concern about the title, because not everybody could go around calling themselves doctor, right? So I think as a consultant, as well as an engineer, I think the APET and the Board of Engineering needs to look into that, and at these people who are calling themselves engineers.
Yeah, I think we need to engage the public more, and this is what I'm saying, that we need to find a meaningful way to engage the public and say, here's what, use a professional contractor, you want to build a house or whatever you want to build. Use a professional engineer, not because we wanted to spend money, it's because, yes, you will spend some money upfront by using a professional, but you will save money long term. Listra, what is your view on that? I know you're very passionate about this. Go ahead.
My thing is as an agent putting out tenders for reviewing tenders, they all ask for your qualification. It is up to the tendering committee and all the other agencies reviewing these applications to what should I say, verify these qualifications, because if it is I am a valuer and I'm presenting my credentials for a project, then the simplest thing is to contact or to go onto the RSCG's website, and you will see me listed, my name, my telephone contact, my place of work, where as a verification that yes, I am a valuer, a qualified valuer, registered with the body representing the surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago, and therein lies the effects in terms of finding the solution and verifying that this individual is a professional. You go onto the RICS site and you will find the names of all the members, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with you that, I mean, we have the IC, we have the RICS, we have APET, Board of Engineering, we have the Contractors Association.
While it is understood that we have a lot of valuers and quality surveyors and who are not members of these institutions, right? And I think it's only up to the institution to advise and put out forums as to the importance of being members of these institutions.
Yeah. And so one of these things I need to mention here is that, you see, professionals, by their very definition, right? They have an ethical behavior. Well, they should have what they call ethical behavior. And so sometimes our advice, the kind of advice we give is not necessarily the advice that clients want to hear, but it's the correct advice. So this is the problem. Sometimes people will go to persons who will just give them what they want to hear, right? But our responsibility and to discharge the public, this responsibility is to make sure and give the correct advice. So as the IC would say, the right decision at the right time. So that is one of the issues that we have there with expert advice versus armchair experts.
But,
Now,
Glenn,
Glenn, I noticed that they are quiet. Go ahead.
right. Yeah, one contribution. Okay, so most from the contracting element. Again, when you're responding to a proposal or a bid, in fact, most state agencies ask for, org structure with your proposed staff, signed resumes. So, clients would have the opportunity to evaluate and ensure that they have the correct resources, human resources to deliver the project. But what we have observed in the industry is that, okay, yes, people put in their tender proposal or their proposal, all nice, black and white. But when it comes to implementation, the persons that they do propose is not the persons who actually assigned for implementation. And that's where you need proper supervision and oversight on those projects. And then, so if okay, Mr. A was proposed and Mr. A is not available due to some reason, well, then equivalent to Mr. A should be offered. And that contributes to projects not being delivered there because, contractors, yes, you win the proposal, but when it comes to implement, it's a whole different team and things get out of control, inexperience, underqualified, all the attributes for delivery.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, I can't probably cast fault on the engineering community here, or the project management community. But again, if the contractor is proposing is put forward a different team to what was put forward in the tender, I mean, usually the tender documents indicate, so as Mr. Mahavir indicated, that you need to substitute with someone of equal expertise. So if the organization overseeing the construction or the implementation doesn't enforce that, right? That's not the contractor's fault. I mean, to me, that again is on the execution arm, is on the implementation arm of the project. I mean, they need to ensure. I mean, again, I have had instances where I rejected as a proposed person because they didn't have they wouldn't have the experience in the particular project, and we said, well, no, you need to put somebody at least equivalent to who you had put in the tender because they were acceptable. That person was acceptable, right? It comes back to the supervision part of it. I mean,
Adish, just Jack. Okay, so you may have a project manager, you maybe have identified the project manager who would project manage the project, but he's really a visiting project manager for 2 hours a week, and you're on about 15 different projects, so you really don't get the focus and dedication. It's really a foreman or a supervisor on the job. So yes, he presents paper and he attends a site meeting, but when it comes to execution on the site is something else.
I see that happening in all circles. From the contractor side, I've seen some contractors doing that, having a roofing project manager, and I've seen it on the consultancy side too. And even on the client side, right? So,
well, again, it comes back to the tender evaluation. You look at the manpower loading chart and the time contribution that the contractors put forward. Because if the contractor in his manpower loading chart indicated 50% of the project manager's time supposed to be on this project, and the project manager coming once per week, that's obviously not fair. And you only hear from once per week.
No, of course not. But I mean, I used to work at Trinidad, so I can tell you, and those days they had the RE, the resident engineer. But I'm hardly seeing that now where there's, and it comes back down to possibility in terms of client financing. So a consultant would put the proposal to a client for construction supervision. When the client reads the financial aspect, it's like, wow, this is costing us too much. But we're not recognizing that the purpose of the RE being 100% on the site at all times is to ensure quality. And so we're looking to chop the financing at the construction supervision stage or even at the design stage, and then you're going to have long-term effects. In fact, Lisha would tell you, I'm sure she would have done studies on this. There are studies coming out of the UK where cutting the construction supervision costs or the design costs is going to cost you more in the long term in terms of the maintenance. Yeah, let's try.
That is correct. The first person they want to cut is the consultants. And these are the people with the experience and the knowledge and to guide the project along the right path to complete, So, but going back to the org chart, a lot of tenders that are coming now, they're asking for project specific organizational chart, which is the persons that you're going to be putting on or allocating for the particular project. It is up to the administrator on the site to ensure that these are the persons who are coming onto the site to do the specific requirements,
All right.
and
Yeah, but
Let's talk about this. Oh no, go ahead.
no, yeah,
Sorry.
but one
Sorry.
thing though, I mean, so let's suppose you are the favored consultant for a project, and then you have the employer saying, well, okay, I see you catered so much for quality assurance testing. The contract says the contractor is responsible for quality control. What you need quality assurance testing for, and they want to take that out. I mean, some consultants may stand their ground and say, no, we need that, but then the employer would just say, okay, well, thank you, but no thank you, and you go on to the consultant who would accept, okay, well, the contractor has to do quality control, and that's the only checks for quality, and that comes back as you had indicated there, that where you compromise on that aspect of it, it costs you more in the long run.
In the long run, because if you now have to go get somebody to rectify that problem, who will probably even charge more than what was in the original bid.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's not a sustainable way of managing construction, and that is what we have to get to: sustainable solutions of managing construction in industry, right? Let's talk a little bit about skilled workers. So we dealt a lot with professionals. Are we seeing a reduction in skilled workers? And when I mean skilled, not the masons that we may have now who could just put up a block, but the skilled mason or the skilled carpenter or the skilled welder that you used to have long ago. What is all your take on that?
I think it has been reduced because, I mean, when you look at the NESC and the programs they offer and the subscription to those programs, they're undersubscribed. People, you don't have people going there to get the proper training to learn how to weld, how to lay blocks, how to about carpentry, formwork construction. You're not attending those programs. And I mean, when you look at the costs, it's very reasonable. I think, life for me, I can't understand why people don't why the people don't do that. I mean, right now personally, I'm looking for a skilled mason to do something for me. I can't find a skilled mason.
Well, we have Glenn here. Glenn could
Okay, well,
do some recommendations.
Definitely is an area for improvement at the national level, and this topic is such in a timely fashion, is that we have reached out to the Ministry of Youth Development, identifying this as a challenge. In fact, we have tentatively a meeting booked. The association have a meeting booked during the course of next week to discuss the reintroduction of trade or technical institute training with respect to masons, carpenters, steel fixers, tile layers, a whole set of skill craft areas, and hopefully those meetings could come have some fruit in terms of revitalizing the training initiative. Because if you ask yourself, okay, as somebody who finished secondary school, where I can go to learn carpentry? I don't know if anybody in the audience or here the panelists could answer, decisively. Do you go to where you go to learn carpentry?
No, they go on the job site.
Right, and again, you learn it. That is the practical, but you need to learn, okay, to read a drawing, to read a measuring, understand basic safety. There's some calculations, basic mathematics you need to understand. So back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s, you remember you had these, you had the Petrotrin, you had Caroni, you had TNTech, you had those institutions would have craft training, apprenticeship that would have built the craftsmen, and we had the senior secondary school that those who wouldn't go through the O-level route would have gone and do the NESC craft training. It seems that those areas have reduced or fallen aside, allowing persons to be trained on the field, which is really not the best training, because you need to again understand how to take off quantities, read a measuring tape, and a lot of errors. In fact, additionally, supervisory side, a lot of errors that we have in construction is that persons really don't know, or they're not familiar with even reading a measuring tape. So they speak in feet and inches, but the drawings is in metric. you know, happen serious problems.
I see Listra anxious. Is she waiting? Go ahead, Listra.
Because I have my eldest son is going to the Shimona's North, and I think that's the only school that is still offering the apprenticeship, because they have electrical and electronics, they have plumbing, they have those vocationals. So to get, but there also has to be the incentive to get the people who are willing to go to these vocational schools and actually do the courses and get qualified so that they can enter into the workspace. They also have to have the practical experience, because reading something on a sheet of paper and actually going down there onto the site and actually doing the work is something that is totally different. And so they need to do. And in the last, those on-the-job training programs, a lot of people, they have a stipend that they will get when they go to. I have heard people saying that, listen, I just want to do this for the next few months so that I can have an income. So really, a lot of them are not really going into the program because they want to learn something. They're just going in there to get the dollar. And encouraging them now to do something that is worthwhile and actually getting the schooling and the knowledge and the experience to move forward further is something that has to be looked at.
No, I think on government projects especially, and the government and the state enterprise will have the power to, is that they could put in their conditions, in their engagement conditions, that the contractor must liaise with the NESC or something in terms of taking on a certain number of trainees to get experience and learn the skills required to work on a construction site. Right? I mean, you're not. I mean, I've seen that clause, but I've not seen it being enforced. I think the government or the state enterprise, they need to again liaise with the contractor association and see how this could be effectively managed so that the people benefit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And what is coming out of the discussion as we rounding up to the last session here is that a lot of things that used to happen in our industry seem to not be happening again. And we need to get back to those days of, with respect to labor, as we're talking about apprenticeships, having skilled labor force, demanding skilled labor force, all right, and so on. So I want to move on from the this section to the final two sessions, and then a closing session per se, where we'll talk about what are some of the concrete, I like to, I'm a civil engineer, so I like to use that with some of the concrete initiatives that we could have going forward in the industry. So let's talk a little bit about health and safety, and then quality, and then technology. So health and safety. This is more of a rapid fire question. What is your view on the health and safety culture in the industry? Has it improved from where it was in the 80s or the 90s and in the early 2000s?
From when I started 25 years ago, I have seen a significant improvement in the health and safety. Right, and I think also the contractors themselves have significantly improved. What you have happening, again, I think we had kind of touched on this before the session started, that sometimes, like, I mean, I have had a project where I suspended the works for 2 contractors on health and safety, and then I was dragged across at a higher level. Why am I stopping the project and affecting the contractors doing the work and the public not seeing the work getting done, and only when the legal advisor advised the particular individual that he has done the right thing, that if we allow the contractor to continue, they expose us to lawsuits in the event that something happens. Only then the person quiet down a bit or calm down a bit. Right, but I mean, again, I have seen a significant improvement. All right,
Glenn, Listra?
Yeah, definitely, as Adish indicated, is the maturity in terms of health and safety. In terms of if it's a consider Trinidad and Tobago in terms of construction industry, the energy sector again have championed the improvement, but the general construction industry has improved significantly. I think if there's a baseline us against the Caribbean, I think Trinidad and Tobago leads in terms of health and safety in the construction industry. There's always room for improvement, but I think PP is a standard acceptance in all sites. Whereas back 25 years ago, Adisha had that was so it seems as a status thing. Now those things are standard. So I would say our health and safety protocols and procedures have improved. In fact, we were invited in Grenada, state as a state project to even do some recommendations on health and safety, because they see Trinidad and Tobago as leading in that area. So I would say that we have a grade on health and safety. Again, they may have areas that persons may choose to cut corners, but I would say that's in minority.
I think what you need to do, so what I sometimes need to see, what I think we need to see is that the health and safety officer, who's the frontline health and safety side, get more support from the company's management, right? Because sometimes the health and safety requirements goes against production, and then you get some friction there with the on-site person and the HSE officer, right? I mean, in the organization chart, when you look at the organization chart, the health and safety officer should report directly to the manager. It shouldn't go through any supervisor. That's how in terms of the organization chart. When you see the health and safety officer reporting directly to the manager, then you know that that organization is serious about health and safety.
I agree with Mr. Adish, because there are sometimes when the health and safety officer would stop the works for some reason, the supervisors on the site will be against it. So yeah, reporting to someone at a higher level outside might be the best way. But yes, health and safety has improved in the construction industry as long as I have been in it. From when I started back in 2002. So, and it has improved greatly, but like Mr. Glenn Mahabu Singh said, there is room for improvement. There are still people out there who take it very lightly until disaster strikes. So.
Now, one of the things we have to discuss in this health and safety initiative, and I thank you all for that contribution, is what is the impact of the cannabis laws on your workers? Because, there are some workers, construction workers, and let's not kid ourselves, they are prone to smoking the cannabis. So what is your take on that, the impact of the cannabis laws? Now, has this been discussed at any level?
Well, on certain products, you have the drug and alcohol testing where I mean there are certain maximum limits for these substances in your system. I mean, if the person exceeds it, then I mean, depending upon the extent to which it exceeded, there are certain it will determine the action to be taken, right? But I think we need to ensure. I mean, if the whether the consumption of cannabis or whatever the use of cannabis affects one's motor skills, then with this, then we need to make sure that the drug and alcohol screening on construction sites is more active, right? Yeah. And it's because again, how do you do that? I mean, is there a test that can give you some sort of instant whether it's present in the system or not? Because you may not get an absolute value, but at least you get whether it's in the system or not, and then you can see what further action has to be taken, whether the person needs to actually go and get a confirmatory test, and then you take action after that. But I think if where certain substances inhibit the person's motor skills, they become a threat to the other people on the site as well as themselves. So in terms of the systems that you have on the site for monitoring the safety of the workers, you need to have something that where you can get more immediate results to be able to take the appropriate action.
Yeah. Glenn, you have any input on that?
Well, again, it's a zero tolerance policy in construction with respect to drug and alcohol. So either and most, in fact, all sites that I have known have implemented a zero tolerance policy with respect to those things, and they would have their daily their random drug testing to police or manage the policy. So I do see that as a challenge. Again, people need to set their policy and work their policy to ensure that there's safety, because you can't be talking about those things that you're doing multi-story building or you're operating heavy equipment or heavy machinery. That's just a recipe for disaster.
There are still those who will bypass it and get through. So the random drug test and toolbox is really something that is very, very necessary on site.
Correct.
So let's talk about on quality. I wish we had a whole 3 hours to talk about this, but we run out of time. Quality. Let's talk about quality in an issue that I know touches everybody. Potholes. Right? Everybody affected by potholes one way or the other, right? Right? And I'm not knocking Glenn. I know Glenn is here. That's all. I'm gonna make a declaration. I'm not knocking it, Glenn. The question is, and this discussion could go again into another 3 hours, but of course we just have about 20 odd minutes. Who is the true culprit of quality? Let's start with Glenn. Who is the true culprit?
Who is it the true culprit of quality? Again,
yeah, or the lack of quality in
okay, so it comes back to putting a reasonable price. You need to price a job to deliver quality. if you price it, if you underprice your job, definitely cut corners.
Why would you underprice the job? Not you, but why would anybody underprice the job?
Again, they may not have studied the document. Again, when contractors receive some entities, when they receive their bid documents, volumes are specification, volumes are drawing, a short bid time, you have to calculate your price. So it's very rare, if a contractor don't have the sufficient resources or adequate resources to review and analyze and respond, they may just price based on experience and omit things. And when they go to implementation, they're under budget, and therefore that is where the problems start. And then the oversight may say, okay, I allow this to pass, I allow that to pass. And then when it goes into operation within 6 months of the defects liability period, or 10 months, so it might even last the defects liability period, and the month 13 or month 14, you start to see failure. Again, defects liability period, then contractor walk away. The public end up with additional cost for repairs or maintenance or rework.
Right.
So
I hear you.
I think the full team has to take responsibility.
Right, Mark Lystra, who is the true culprit of lack of quality? Your opinion?
Well, my first thing would be the employer, because they're the ones putting out the brief for the project for bidding. And if in bidding you don't have proper brief and proper scope of works, then you can foresee based on your experience. But how far can that go? Right? How far can that go? So briefing is one of the most important things when it comes to actually pricing for a project and putting in a proper bid. Right? The other thing that would probably affect the pricing issues would be, well, now we have COVID, and where works are scarce, a lot of people might be underbidding for that reason, because they need to get work. And in underbidding, as Mr. Glenn
Glenn.
said,
Mr.
No, Glenn, you can say it.
Yeah, I was wondering why you call him Mr. Glenn. I just call him.
affects quality when you underbid,
Harish, who is the true culprit?
I must add.
Oh, sorry.
A lot of people may be underbidding because they're realizing that the employer is really going after the lowest bid.
I have to agree with Ms. Raghul Charles, and that the employer is to blame for quality, because the employer is the one who only wants to go after the lowest bid in terms of both on the supervision as well as the execution, the construction side. And again, we have first-hand experience. We have the employer wanting to reduce your quality assurance budget, right? Because the contract document says the contractor is responsible for X, Y, and Z, and has to provide material and meet the specifications and the drawings, and they want to take that away. But then again, for the contractor has to properly price for doing the quality control as required. And then, as Mr. Mavia Singh had indicated, that some contractors they underbid just to keep a cash flow going in the company, and the first thing that they would compromise on is quality control testing. Right, because coming back to the employer needs to realize that if he wants a quality product, he has to pay for it. And he has to pay for it on the quality control side from the contract and the quality assurance side from the supervising consultant or the project manager. Right, I don't believe. I mean, my personal belief is that you can't rely strictly on the contractor's quality control. Not that the contractor isn't being honest or anything, but sometimes, again, it comes back to random sampling. The contractor may sample something wrong. If he follows the ASTM procedures for random sampling, he samples it, and he may miss something, and that's where the quality assurance comes in just as a check on the quality control. And I think the employer needs to recognize that they need to have both of those in their projects for it to be successful.
So I agree with all of you, and this is where I look at it, right? It's called a cascading fault system, right? So cascading means if the employer starts off by saying to the consultant or the designer, here's what, how much is this thing going to cost me? You tell them, okay, well, 10 million. Well, I only have 8 million, so you need to cut some corners. Now, employer won't directly tell you cut corners. They'll find a strategic way to tell you to cut corners, right? So that is one. Then, if the employer does that, you already compromise the project. And the consultant left in a very catch-22 position where they now have to, in order to get paid, they have to please the client. But in pleasing the client, what might happen is that you may end up doing a compromise design. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is if the contractor cuts corners. Now, I'm not alluding that any contractor does that, but I mean, we can admit that in the past they have had some contractors that have cut corners. So to me, it's a more collaborative approach to construction to avoid this lack of quality. And in fact, the comments in the chat flaring up right now. So let me just read some of the comments. And this is from our good friend Rakesh Ramnath, who we all know we need to look at safety in the not only in public sector, but private sector projects. Secondary roads are not managed by capable individuals from the client side. Too much political influence. So I don't want to go too much to the politics side, but too much political influence affects quality from the onset. Properly priced jobs really gets the award. Interesting comment. And then from Dr. Lam, not fully understanding the work scope is one reason. We know about that. Not looking at the scope in its entirety and your stakeholders and who's affected. And then he goes on to say, but a technical and commercial evaluation process should, of course, rule out underpriced bids with poor technical content, quality, and control procedures. Okay, and then we have a question, but I'll take that question in a little bit. As an earlier comment, Lisa was saying that MIC is currently advertising some short courses for construction. So that would answer that issue we're talking about with skilled workers. Right, now that we're on the last 15 minutes or so of this thing, or this webinar, I want to touch on technology and some concrete actions that could come out of a seminar, a webinar like this. So the first thing is, in terms of technology, what is the percentage implementation like in Trinidad and Tobago for building information modeling, mapping, robotics, augmented reality, 3D printing, and machine learning in the construction sector? Who wants to go first on this one?
Let me make a comment. In fact, I recently was involved in a project that implemented the BIM, right? And I could tell you definitely that helps the brings a significant amount of management input in terms of project implementation, and definitely want to see if that could be adopted starting from the design phase and goes into the construction phase, because you could see you could see the entire building phases. You could track it. You could see where you have clashes, conflicts, and it would save a lot of time in terms of the construction process. So I see that as definitely a technology that need to be adopted in Trinidad and Tobago, and be from the consultants to contractors adopting that model, and it assists you with your straight down to your quantities. I'm not sure from Trintoplan, I know Adish representing APET in terms of how much of the members have adopted that BIM modeling in terms of projects, but see it as a significant tool that maybe in the next couple of years that should be introduced widely in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say how many members, but the use of the technology, I mean, the BIM, yeah, and Civil 3D, those types of software to minimize conflicts and pick up conflicts early on with different buried services things. You are seeing consultants embracing the technology more and more, but the problem is the technology is expensive. I mean, just to get one license, it could be something like 50,000 up to 50,000 US, right? So you need to have work to be able to pay for that, right? So I mean, I think that may be where the hesitation is, because right now everything is going on to the cloud, and I mean, they're going to the cloud so that these software producers could better manage who's using the software, and because you don't own the software, you basically pay for the right to use the software. That's basically what you're paying for, and that right to use that type of software is expensive. I mean, just a simple thing like AutoCAD. When you look at the license, the license fees for AutoCAD for a single user is a significant amount of money. I mean, the organization I work for, we are ISO 9001 certified, so we have to ensure all our software is licensed and all that. So in terms of the number of licensed software is limited for certain software programs, right? We use a shifting license in the office, right? That we shift the license from computer to computer depending upon who needs to use it, depending upon what type of software. But the biggest hindrance is the cost, the actual cost. I don't think is people afraid of the technology, but the cost for the technology is the biggest hindrance for us in Trinidad.
Of course, and then you don't have incentives. Incentives are not there to really, help that.
Adish, one question. When consultants respond to their clients with proposals, right? So they're going to invite you to do a design proposal for bridges or whatever. Is part of the evaluation how much license software you have, or so therefore you're competing on a fair basis, or that's omitted?
I know they ask about, if I try to remember, I think they ask about software, but they don't already ask about how many licenses you have. But I mean, as you talk about our organization, because we are ISO 9001 certified, our quality management system requires to have licensed software. So we have to go and spend all this money to get AutoCAD and Civil 3D and start on all that license. Whereas you have some other consultants using this crack software and they don't have those overheads. They don't have those overheads.
But
right?
that's the point I'm trying to and as ethics come back to
well, crack software too could have errors in it, and it could put I've noted errors in design as well. So that's one thing. What about augmented reality and VR, virtual reality? I've seen it all around the world, but not sure how.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that locally, but as I said, I've seen it around the world. Also helps employee. I mean, you could use it to help the employer could see what his building will look like in a walkthrough, those sorts of things. And but I haven't seen much of that being done locally. I mean, I see you have here robotics and drones. I know people using these drones now more for mapping and surveying. So that's being done. I mean, we have used that. We have used that also for depending upon the sites when we have to go on site visits. Depending upon the topography, we use our drone to go and try and see what the site like in areas where we can access.
All right. So now that we're into the last 8 minutes of this, I might very informative webinar. I thought this was quite a useful session. I'm just gonna ask some questions and let's see how you respond. Either ye or nay, as they say, more like a voting, more like polling. Would you recommend that we implement a grading system for infrastructure in Trinidad? And by vote, that's it.
My master's thesis was based upon developing an economic model to assess your asset, and that in a sense would indicate how effective your management strategies are. Right. So yes, I am for a grading system.
Good. Listra?
So if we will get better quality at the end of the day, grading would be a system to implement.
Yeah.
You know,
Glenn?
at the end of the
Again.
day, the taxpayer wants to have quality.
Of course.
Again, when value for money and return on public spending, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, I think our joint grading system is definitely needed to, again, it's not to knock any ministers or politicians, but to let them know what we think about as professionals of the state of the infrastructure and also the key aspects of the construction industry.
Yeah, but
So
the grading system, as I say, if you do it on an annual basis, it tells you how effective your maintenance strategies are, and then you would know what action should be taken.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
I mean,
agree with that. Yeah.
you go out there and you see the milling the Churchill Rural Highway, right? So they take out a certain amount, they put back in nice black asphalt. So the public say, oh yeah, that's nice. But I mean, you're basically taking aged asphalt, which has a high modulus elasticity, which is strong, and you're putting weak asphalt there now. And then you have these trucks are overloaded. So it will fail, right? I'm not telling you as it is.
No, you don't laugh because I'm watching Glenn expression while you're talking, right?
No.
I tell myself this going to go into
that's not the contractor's fault. That's not the contractor's fault. That's not the contractor's fault. That's the designer's fault. You're taking out. Okay, so it's crap. We don't like maintenance in Trinidad. Maintenance is not glamorous.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Right. So whereas you could go and seal the cracks. If once the crack comes up, if you have a proper asset maintenance system in place, you go and seal the cracks. You get life of it. You get life out of it. Once you see cracks in Trinidad, mill and pave. So as I said, aged asphalt is stronger than new asphalt.
Right.
And you have the same load going on it. So you take out something that is strong. It may be cracked, but it's stronger. And you put it on a new product that's weaker. It must fail. Right?
A fire barrage in the last 5 minutes.
That's not the contractor's fault. People go and say, "Oh, look, the contractor will pour work there." It's not the contractor's fault. It's whoever came with the maintenance strategy.
Exactly.
Right? Whether it came from the politician, it came from the technocrats in the ministry, whoever it is. Right? That's the fault. I mean, you can knock contractors sometimes, but sometimes they unfairly knock contractors into that.
Excellent. You see?
Well, that's what Glenn would agree with that.
Don, maybe you need to do a seminar on infrastructure, roads.
No, that comment, don't worry. that's the next seminar. But I think we need to have a grading system in all seriousness because we need to, and this has to be something joint. You see how this seminar is our first effort at joining the different organizations and players in the industry. If we continue to put out and join, then the public will have more confidence in us. We'll stop having erosion into the construction industry. I mean, in metaphorical erosion, but actually erosion. And if we come up with a grading system that says, this is how we think about the infrastructure, at some point, somebody is going to listen, hopefully. Let me ask our last couple of questions as we have 4 minutes. Collaborative contracting, yay or nay? Let's fighting more risk sharing between client and contractor rather than throwing all the risk on the contractor. Because I often tell clients, when you throw the risk on the contractor, you're literally throwing back on yourself because you employ the contractor and it's your project. So collaborative contracting.
I think that
to have a united front.
Everybody good. Yeah, go ahead, Listra.
I said it's always the best thing to have a united front. When you have a unity amongst members of the industry, you will always have the best coming out of it.
I mean, I think the new FIDIC, the 2017 FIDIC Red Book and the Yellow Books, I think they're trying to promote that collaborative contracting or collaboration with the contractor and engineers. I mean, if the contractor sees something, he needs to highlight it as early as possible, right? So you can see what action has to be taken. I mean, we don't use this contract in Trinidad, but the new engineering contract with the UK, right? That also is a very collaborative contract. Conditions of contract.
Yeah.
Right. I think
on my part, they've done a lot of work in publishing these things, and so you're quite right, Adish.
Yeah.
All right. So final question, final thought, and then I'll close my final thought. Each person, what should we lobby for going forward? Let's talk about, a former boss of mine used to talk about the low-hanging fruits, right? So lobbying, low-hanging fruits, or it's so-called short-term measures and long-term measures. Let's start with Listra.
The first thing I would lobby for is from payment legislation. Because as long as we get paid on time, there will be cash flow and there will be efficient progress.
That'll be a long-term measure, right? Or short-term?
Well, I would want to put it somewhere around as a matter of urgency.
Okay.
So I would prefer it to be somewhere between the short, medium areas, because cash flow is everything. You don't have cash flow, there's nothing that can be done.
Exactly. Harish, what would you lobby for? Short-term and long-term? Well, what should we lobby for?
Well, I mean, short term again is this making sure we get procurement legislation in place, right, as soon as possible. Long term, I don't know, some sort of we need to come with some sort of asset maintenance system in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to do that. We need a national transportation plan, because right now we're just going blind right now. I mean, every day people waste time in traffic. Right, the politicians, they have the police escort. They can go, so they get through. They have the bus route passes, but we need a national transportation plan. Don, I could continue about things that we need to improve, but let me end at that point at this junction right now.
Well, I'll agree with you, and then you hear my stuff. But let me go on with Glenn. Glenn, short term and long term.
So I think short term and long term, I think we need to have and Trinidad and Tobago for the industry, again, all parties who play in the industry, projects in the pipeline. So organizations and entities and all participants could plan in terms of, okay, where the industry is in 1 year time, 5 years time, 3 years time. So you don't have these, you can treat with these peaks and valleys. You know where to put trading, you know where to put capital investment if it's software and plant and equipment. So I think having that 3 to 5 year plan in terms of where the industry going, if it's infrastructure, if it's drainage, if it's those people help and train. So you don't have
but Glenn, 3 to 5 years the term of our government. That's too short.
Well,
you need something, a 20-year plan that we
federal government.
Right. So if you ask anybody now, okay, what's the projects for next year? Is okay, yes, some announcements was made for the we have the airport in Tobago. You talk about the route to Togo for the eastern development. You have the ongoing work to Point 14 Highway, but you know it's really how we respond is when the clients put out the project on the newspapers. I put an invitation to tender, then people jump on board. But we should know that, okay, in 12 months time or 15 months time or 2 years time, 10 bridges coming out with Ashto tree or beams. So therefore, you know, persons could say, okay, well, I want to get into this market and manufacture beams, and they could make an investment and see the investment come to reality. So just it's for planning. I think we need to plan. So if there's a shortage in say, you know, high rise, persons with high rise experience, you could go and train, or you could go on some course to gear up yourself for that segment.
All right, so I'm close now, but I just wanted to read just one comment from the, one or two comments from the chat there. Dr. Ellis, Leighton Ellis, was saying that the NEC contract leads to more collaboration, but it will be shifted to what they call the integrated project delivery approach, which is kind of like what we talk about collaborative. And of course, he is saying that this is strengthened through building information modeling to mitigate if any sources of conflicts and errors, right? So my closing comments is this, right? And of course, I want to thank, let me do some thanks first and then I'll close. I want to thank Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association President, Mr. Glenn Mahavir Singh. I want to thank the President of Comet, Ms. Listra Ragu Charles, sorry. And then I want to thank our representative from APET, known to everyone, Mr. Adish Surijnath. And my closing comments is this. The construction industry at this point in time, it has dwindled a little bit in terms of the opportunities. We've seen certain measures and customs that used to take place in the industry that seem to be disappearing, but we need to bring it back. I agree that we should have plans for everything. We should have a national transportation plan, which I know Dr. Ray Furlong has been very passionate about for many years. We should have a national physical plan, which I remember Professor Sweet, when he taught all of us in our UE days, he spoke about that, and I think it is time for another national physical plan. We definitely need a national drainage plan. I had a seminar a couple of years ago, and we talked about a drainage plan. We need it now because we are seeing flooding all over the country, and as engineers, we need to say something about it. We need to be more vocal as engineers and contractors and professionals and not be afraid of victimization of any kind, right? We need to say things in a reflectional manner, just like this session today. This session was quite a great session. We said what we had to say in a very professional and well-documented and educated and researched manner. And I must thank you all for being very professional and very honest in what you had to say. So I suppose sessions like these would, you have to repeat some of those in the future. For the 30 people who are watching online today, I thank you all for attending. And one of the things I notice about these seminars is that when people can't get to attend because they have commitments, I will tell you that right after, people will then start viewing them. And so most of my seminars that I've done, we've had about 40 people watching online, and then it jumps about 500 people later on. So I am sure a topic of great interest like this one, status of the construction industry, would be viewed by many in the coming weeks. So again, I want to thank everybody and have a safe journey home. And thank you to our online audience and for all the questions that was posed. And I'll see you in another seminar. Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Don, for this opportunity.
No problem. Thanks.